When you play the Game of Thrones, you
Subscribe and like.
or you die. There is no middle ground.
Alright, hello YouTube. So, we're back on the Grease Goblins channel, and we're coming at you with kind of another chapter breakdown video. And this one's going to be on the last Catelyn chapter of A Game of Thrones, which is basically the crowning of Robb as the King of the North. And I wanted to talk about this chapter specifically just because of how stupid it really is and the thought process behind the Northern Lords. But yeah, before we get into that, if you would like to suggest a video for me that you would like me to see or like me to do, let me know in the comments. Also subscribe and like. Also, hope you guys like my new chair. It's kind of color coded to, yeah, the channel theme. But looking at the chapter itself, it's a very interesting chapter because you start by thinking about what Robb should do. The Northern Lords can't agree, like usual, and some of them are like, hey, we should support Renly. He has the largest force. We would outnumber the Lannisters 5-1 or whatever, and we would win the war easily. We could go home. And then others say, you know, Stannis, because he's a legitimate lord. He's who Ned thought should have been king and who should be king. He is the, you know, the best dude. But, you know, that's personal bias. If you side with Renly, it's pretty much insta-win. But the other option that is suggested is that we just wait it out. We don't do anything. We kind of sit here, see who wins this Game of Thrones, and then side with them. Now, this comes from the Frey representative, and people call him a coward, say he's stupid and he's craven. But that's the third option. So the fourth option is Catelyn suggests they should retreat, and what is the point of this anymore, right? You know, Ned's dead. They're not getting him back. We should just trade Jaime for Sansa, and we should just get out of the war. Which, in and of itself, is actually not a bad idea. But, so you have these four options. I would say three of the options, actually, I'd say every one of those options is actually a valid option. That makes a lot of sense. And then there's a fifth option. Great John Umber decides to make Robb Stark King of the North. I'm going to tell you why this is a bad idea. One, your alliance, any alliance with Stannis is gone. You know that instantly. It's gone, knowing who Stannis is. Two, the Lannisters now are definitely not going to let you out of this war, calling yourself King of the North and taking a part of their kingdom. So any thoughts of retreating and just kind of holding is, you can still do it, but you kind of lost the point by saying you're King of the North. So your last option that makes sense is you make an alliance with Renly, which does make sense. That's what Robb does end up trying to do. As well as you could have done what the Frey representative decided to say, which they almost end up doing, really. They pretty much just kind of wait. They're not too impactful in the next few battles. I mean, they are, but not really with Tywin's army and messing up his whole thing. So, with that being said, if you look at the King of the North thing, right? It was super dumb because you isolate a lot of your allies that you could have possibly had at this point. Because what alliances are you going to make? Robb is supposed to marry a Frey girl, so you can't make an alliance with, say, like, some other one of the kingdoms because he's already going to be married. You look at the other alliances that would straight up just not accept you as the king, like Stannis. And even Renly, to a degree, has a problem, right, with this whole King of the North thing, because you're taking part of his you know, continent or his land. So, in my opinion, what really should have happened is Robb should have decided, we're going for Stannis, we're going with Renly, or we wait for whoever one of those wins the conflict between Renly and Stannis for the Baratheon power, you jump to them. And then you pretty much don't lose. Because you're already winning. The Lannisters at this point are losing the war. If you look at where their forces are, you have Tywin with maybe a good 20,000-ish men, and he's marching to Harrenhal at this point. You also then have the Lannister supply lines from Casterly Rock blocked because you hold River Run. It's been taken back at this point of the story, and you have it basically blockaded. So you're not getting any supplies if you're Tywin. King's Landing is not getting supplies because the Reach, for one, is with Renly. You have Storm's End is Storm's End. They're going to go for either, most of them go for Renly, but maybe some for Stannis. Dorne's definitely not going to help you. So if you're really looking at it, as well as the Arryns aren't helping either. The Lannisters are completely alone at this point. It's not looking good. The war is going very poorly for them. If Robb decides to do kind of a mixed plan, he does what the Freys say to do, where they just kind of sit back and just, let it happen and figure out which Baratheon brother wins. They then can go to that side, say, I'm here to support you as long as, we get my sisters back and, you keep me as warden in the North, whatever. Right? So let's say it ends up playing out how it plays out in the story that Stannis wins. So Stannis kills Renly, and Stannis ends up with the forces. Robb could then add another, about 20,000 forces at this point to Stannis' force. It'd be very difficult for them to lose Blackwater, because here's the thing. The Starks could just guard the flanks, which is probably what Stannis would have done, or at least have a force guarding the flanks, basically coming to King's Landing, that even if Tywin and the Tyrell alliance still happens, which I'm kind of doubtful of at this point, because the Starks add a good formidable force where it's not this... it's not going to be a sneak attack. 2, it's really not looking good for the Tyrells. So the Tyrells might even attempt to just band with the other kingdoms at this point, seeing the power shift. But even if they do, right, I feel like Robb's forces with good defensive positioning would still be able to hold against any type of flanking maneuver by Tywin or Loras Tyrell. And I think what we end up having is Stannis actually wins the Battle of the Blackwater, as well as Robb lives. Everybody lives. And you pretty much have peace in the kingdoms, because all the Lannisters die. Tywin's dead, Tyrion's dead, Cersei's dead, Jaime at this point is going to die. Tom and all the children are going to die. Actually, Myrcella would be in Dorne by this point, so she would actually probably be alive. So Myrcella would then inherit Casterly Rock, unless they gave it to somebody else. Well, actually, Myrcella is a bastard, so Stannis probably would either kill her or just keep her as like a ward, basically in King's Landing. So basically, House Lannister is gone. Kevin's probably going to die. Maybe some of the ties with the Freys, they would be kept alive and they would end up ruling Casterly Rock. But in the long, short story of this, the kingdoms are actually pretty united. So you look at one key event that happens in the story, Lord Greatjon Umber declaring Robb as King of the North ends up deeply impacting the rest of the story and definitely the next 2 books. But it's crazy to think about how one event like that, which is just a bad political maneuver, for once I actually think Catelyn's right. In this, I think if they weren't going to go with Renly or Stannis at this point, even though I know Robb did want to go with Renly or Stannis, he should have just retreated, because nobody's taking the North. Cersei says it, in the show. That's not actually in the books, but what she says in that, monologue, where basically, how would you take the North? It's too vast, it's too big, and they know the country way better than we do, is true. The North is basically kind of what I look at as Russia in today's world, where it's so stupid and militarily dumb to try to do a land invasion of Russia that I don't think the North could ever be taken, especially with Moat Cailin, if it's properly defended. Now, the Riverlands would burn, and they would suffer, right? Where the Riverlands, maybe they'd have to give out. But if you're the North, you could be King of the North and just not leave. You could easily just secure it. So, with all that being said, I think even I don't even know if the Greyjoys would have attempted to do a revolution, because they'd be alone in that, and the Norths would just destroy them. So, yeah. if you guys would like to give some input on the chapter I am referring to, or you guys have a different thing that you think could have happened, or if you don't think this was a bad political move in general, let me know. Personally, I think this was very detrimental, and even though it isn't any of the bigger mistakes Robb does make later on, I think it's just so unnecessary for them to make him King of the North. But yeah, I will see you guys all in the next one. I hope you guys have a good day, and bye, guys.
If you think this has a happy ending, you haven't been paying attention.